as a producer of art, I do not have much contact with scientists, and I do not think much about the world of science. That's not to say I don't think well of it, it just doesn't enter my psyche or sort of my realm. But I realized something in connecting with science people, particularly those concerned with the study of DNA or the execution of DNA testing, that scientists and artists share a lot of common ground.
Science and theater walk hand in hand. We are both scientists and artists asking the same questions. Who are we? Why are we here? These questions are eternal and they're in our hearts always. And so I think that we oftentimes are frightened of science.
It is not a coincidence, in my opinion, that the enemies of science also tend to be the enemies of art.
We look at it as a bearer of the unknown and the strange, and taking us in a direction that we may not understand. But I think that's the job of the artist, is to be unafraid, to tackle the big questions that science is asking, because we're asking them too.
To be able to take a scientific concept and to dramatize it for an audience is one of the most thrilling things I think an artist can do.
Taking a DNA test and having the various scientific and artistic conversations related to that was inspiring, because it made me realize that identity is even more complicated than I thought it was.
There's a symbiotic relationship between artists and scientists, because they both think creatively, they both have to think out of the box, and then they both have to make their results, their work, palatable, accessible to an audience or to a general public or to a reader.
And I think for myself, being in the room with all the artists, as well as thinking about the complications of history, and then thinking about what I can say today as a multiracial artist to hopefully bring people together and make people think differently, that's probably the best walkaway that I have from this project, that I will continue to think more deeply and hopefully thoroughly about different kinds of elements of identity, and also be courageous and lucky enough to write about them.
I think the DNA trail has, in terms of thinking about myself and my own ancestry and identity, I think it's helped me further to differentiate between culture and genetics. The genetics play a certain part in, of course, what we look like and some of our predilections, but ultimately, culture, in a sense, is more important. Culture being family writ large. Culture being whatever a community we're born into that has, that's given us a tendency, brings us up to think a certain way, which we can accept or we can react against. But that's very much a part of who we become. And that maybe is more important in terms of our own personalities than even genetics.
Coming from India to Africa to the United States, a sense of family is really cut off, So I can't tell you past my grandfather, the name even. Literally, like my great-grandfather, I couldn't tell you what his name is. Even my father would be struggling to do that, And my father would be the last, maybe he could tell his grandfather's name, so great-grandfather, and that's it. So this became exciting, because we'll do this test. We'll know all about the last few hundred years of my family.
I was incredibly curious about how those tests would work and what sort of results a person would get from them. And then, of course, the next thing I wondered about was how that would become a theatrical piece, and how exactly that would inspire different playwrights.